Welcome to the Yellow Brick Therapy Podcast, episode number 4. This week, I had the pleasure of interviewing Andy Jameson all about school counseling and working with teens. I also wanted to add in a shameless plug about Soma Recovery, which is opening up this January in Wichita. We will be treating eating disorders and also collaborating with therapists to work on the mind-body parts of trauma therapy. So we will have body workers like massage therapists and yoga instructors that will help people resolve some of the trauma stored in their body that we work so hard to work on as clinicians, but don't always have all of the tools or mindsets to work on as clinicians. I am really excited about this project and to share it with you guys come this January. So as we update our marketing materials and we have more information, I will be giving that to you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at jennyahelms@gmail.com. Or you can also check out my Facebook, The Shameless Shrink. Now, let's get to the show. Go ahead and head into our first 4. We are here with Andy, and he is a school counselor.
Yep.
And I'm really excited to just talk with him more about counseling in the school, different various topics, as we'll probably rabbit trail into other stuff, which I'm totally okay with. So I'm just going to go into the first one. What did you originally want to be when you grew up? Like, think back in grade school, elementary school.
I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle.
A Ninja Turtle?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I remember specifically in the 2nd grade in Miss Adrian's class, me and my friends were talking. I was a big Ninja Turtle fan, and she gave us a project. She's like, okay, you guys have to draw what you want to be. And I'm like, sweet, I'm going to be a Ninja Turtle. I didn't know how. I just needed to get a hold of some, ooze somewhere, the green stuff that mutated me, and I'll be rocking and rolling on the bad guys. And, so I remember, it was me and 2 of my friends, and we're talking about it, and we're kind of like, I don't know if we can do that. So I went up to her and I was like, hey, Miss Adrian, I want to be a Ninja Turtle. And she's like, well, there's some difficulty in that. And I'm like, okay, well, my second choice is a ninja. What about that? And she's like, well, you could work for the government. And I'm like, that sounds pretty good, So I think actually I remember I drew a picture of like us standing on top of like the White House, like in our ninja costumes, So... Right. And so, that was one of my first memories of knowing, like, what I wanted to do. And I think, like a lot of boys and probably young men do is they watch movies and they watch TV shows and they idolize that hypermasculinity, type A, type of toughness and, not understanding, pain and war and all those things that even despite my military service, I still don't understand because I'd never been to combat. And I remember one of my staff sergeants saying to me one time, he had said, he's like, the things that I've seen in combat, he's like, I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. Which really kind of tells you, where people are at, I think, with that and just understanding our place and war and killing and all those terrible things. So to back it up, again, that's one of those rabbit holes, it's easy to get off on. Yeah. So it's like, I remember, idolizing that. So, that was kind of the first thing, is like being a ninja, and then I remember 14, 15 years old, watching, some movies and thinking I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I remember one of the movies specifically was Executive Decision with Steven Seagal and The Rock with Sean Connery and I can't think of the other guy's name right now, but yeah, those are 2 of the movies that were like, I want to do that type of thing. But it's like that's one of the reasons why I think I really admire Oliver Stone. Is I think he really gives people like a really good glimpse. A glimpse is exactly probably what it is, of what war is actually like with some of his works. But yeah, so and then I came up and I played competitive paintball just because it was really the only thing I was good at. I actually first started with a church group and went out and did that, and I got into the competitive side of it because I was never into sports, never into football or wrestling. I was very average or below average at those things. and paintball excited me. It gave me an adrenaline rush, and then I got into the competitive side of it, kind of out of the woods, into like the inflatables and things like that. There's a league called X-Ball, or the NXL, National X-Ball League, that I play in, and so it really kind of gave me a home, kind of made me feel like I was good at something. Because in a lot of ways I wasn't good at school. I didn't have a lot of friends. I got bullied quite a bit from like the ages like 7th grade up until about my sophomore or junior year of high school. And so like that one thing, gave me something to look forward to, every week. And so I'm answering your question, I promise.
Yeah,
It's just kind of a long answer.
Taking us through how you arrived
right
at where you're at.
Yeah. So that was the one thing that I felt like I gravitated towards, and then I got into high school, really didn't know what I wanted to do, and throughout high school, I think like probably a lot of people do. I think they probably think that their grades are indicative of their future, what their future might look like. And my grades, the CDF student that I was, told me that I wasn't going to be good at school. Now, I remember when I was a senior, I took one psychology course and I really liked it, but I never thought about being a therapist. I never thought about going into school counseling. I never thought about any of the things that I've, thought about and are doing right now. And then so at 24, I got laid off from Hawker Beechcraft, and I was working in the aircraft field. And the economy took a slump, and that was like 2007, 2008 timeframe. And so I was like, okay, well, I hung out on unemployment for 6 months, and that was cool. It was a lot of fun, and it was like really peaceful. Just it gave me time all day, to just kind of like recoup and like start asking myself like what I wanted to do. And I also understood why rich people hang out with rich people. And it's because it's like they have money to do stuff. I'd call my friends up on a Tuesday night with nothing to do the next day. I'm like, hey, let's go out and drink or whatever. And they're like, no, I can't. I got to work tomorrow. So it's like, it's funny. I kind of understand that perspective a little bit now, just because it's like you have time and money to do things, right? Right. So anyway, so I joined the Army at 24 as a kind of a really a last-ditch effort to do something without education. Because, again, that education in my prior years of high school said, hey, you're a CDF student, you're probably not going to accomplish much, from an educational front. And
when you said CDF, so it was funny, at first I thought you were talking about like a specific type of student, but now I'm understanding your meanings. You made C's, D's, and F's.
Yes,
okay.
yes, grades,
yeah.
yes.
Just want to break that down, because it just clicked in my brain that you meant.
Yeah, the grades, yeah. And so, so I wasn't a very good student. So
you were going places like Harvard.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really helpful, because I mean, obviously, school measures one type of intelligence.
Right.
And I don't think that it's. I mean, obviously, the system can't be perfect, unfortunately. But I think that's helpful to hear about a perspective where it's like, I wasn't. You're A student,
no.
A B student even.
No. I was really bought into that idea of like, hey, if you're not making good grades in high school, you're probably not going to do well in college. And I had an older sister who was 4 years older than I was, and she did very well in high school and got a full scholarship to K-State and a dual major, and she actually ended up getting 3 degrees and like very successful, and I was kind of the black sheep, I'd say, that got into a lot of trouble too. And I think it's just because I think a lot of that came because of bullying, but that's a different story. So, to hop back on how I came to be is the Army was kind of my last ditch effort to do something without a college degree. And I was about an hour into the Army, and I was like, I hate this. And long story short, I got to Korea. I met a friend, and a really good friend. He already had his college degree. And he said, you know what, Andy? He's like, just finish, what you started. Because I had like 30 hours at a community college at Butler. And he's like, just finish your degree. So I did that. And I reflected on what I liked. And the one class I liked in high school was my senior psychology class. So I did that. And then, of course, you start doing some more research, and you're like, hey, I'm not going to be able to really do anything with just a bachelor's in psychology. So then I started reflecting on my past and asking myself, what did I really enjoy the most? Where did I feel the most valued? What do I like doing? What gave me a sense of purpose? And when I reflected back on my past, after playing competitive paintball, I started playing like on Division I level, pretty high level, and I was able to coach kids. But the coaching was fun. To see them do well in the competitive sport was fun. But then the moments after the coaching, when they're waiting on rides to go back home, or, after hours, after practice, and sitting with them and talking with them about what's going on in their lives and the real stuff, past the surface stuff. And feeling like I helped in some ways in that, even if it was just in a form of encouragement, gave me a feeling that was undeniable and was like nothing I've ever had before. And it wasn't a great impact flood of emotions, it was more subtle. And I would describe it as a flowering, a blooming, during those times, and calm and peace and purpose, and almost as if everything else during those times is erased. Time is erased, and you are left with that one person in front of you, and really cool things are happening, So reflecting on those feelings, reflecting on those ideas, then you start to kind of connect that idea and that feeling with what I can do tangibly in the world that can provide me with a living. And my dad, I remember having a conversation in a car parking lot. I was getting my wife's car worked on, and I was sitting in the parking lot after I got the car back, and I was just having a conversation with him. Me and my dad, like, we connect a lot and we talk a lot. And he's like, "Well, Andy, have you ever thought about being a teacher?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I don't know what I'd teach. Like maybe like physical fitness, something like that, a PE teacher and physical education." I was like, "Yeah, that's the only thing I might want to do." And he's like, "Well, I have a friend who's a school psychologist, and he's like, you might go out and visit with him." And I went and sat with that school psychologist, and like he was super stoked to do like a lot of the testing, and I knew immediately, the first 45 minutes to an hour talking to him, it's like, this isn't me. It's like I just really want to connect on that emotional level, on that mental level, and learn more about myself and other people, to not only be better for myself but to be better for other people too. That symbiotic relationship. I learned that word from a National Geographic video about sharks. So, and now in like the 7th grade, I still hold on to that word. But anyways, between the fish and a shark, that one fish cleans the shark and the shark protects the fish. Anyway, that's a little side story.
You wanted to be the shark or the fish?
Probably depended on the day, because it's like some days like that shark is out hunting, man. He's out swimming through those dark waters. He's king of the wild out there. And the other days, the fish is just riding on him, eating the bacteria, just being a part of it, So I think it probably depended on the day. Some days I probably just wanted to be the fish along for the ride, getting fed, and getting protected at the same time. And, but yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought.
You didn't want to be a school psychologist.
Yeah, I didn't want to be, yeah, I want to connect on the emotional level, And so I think one of the greatest ironies in my life is how much I hated school. Yeah. And then I came back to school, and I live by one of these ideas. Is I remember also, it's like coming up and watching those movies, and like watching like Star Wars and things like that. It's like you're coming up and it's like you think there's going to be all these great wise people that are going to help to lead your way. And that saying that I mentioned earlier about coming back to and living by is, sometimes we're the thing, we become the thing that we wish we wanted in our own lives. Mm-hmm. And I think I wanted, that wiser person in my life to kind of help me, guide me. And it's like, also as I grow, it's like I realize on a much deeper level, it's like I can't be that person for everyone. And at the end of the day, especially in my profession and our profession, it's about providing those ideas in relation within the framework of that other person's life, not within our framework. And of course, we're going to be able to provide, nuggets of wisdom here and there, but at the end of the day, of course, it's always about them. It's always about the person sitting in front of you. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, sorry, that was the long answer.
That's a long answer, yeah.
Yeah.
That works,
yeah.
though.
Okay, cool.
That's really cool. And so what's been one of your most learning or worst moments in school counseling?
like worst moments, learning moments.
Something you did wrong.
Oh, something I did wrong?
Right. That looking back on, you're like,
yeah.
maybe that was because I could see, we all are going to do things wrong.
Sure.
That's just inevitable.
Yeah.
But do you have a moment that you did something particularly wrong and you learned from it?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that like with the first one, just kind of like one of those things where you like, you know, get smacked on the forehead and you're like, whoop. So I remember like my third day of work, these girls come rushing in and they're like, Mr. Jameson, there's a girl having a panic attack in the girls' locker room. And it's like, I want to strap on my cape, and I got about 3 steps away from my desk, and I'm like, hold on, girls' locker room, male, that's not a good place for me to be.
Right.
You know, so like I went next door to my female co-counselor, and I was like, hey, could you go ahead and take this one? You know, so I think that's one of the first things that it's like, you know, you're working with, you know, so in our particular school, there's like 600 students, you know, and so that's 600 variables, you know, and then you have teachers and you have parents and you have everyone else. So I think in times it's easy to get caught up in the idea. It's like, I'm going to go out and do this and do the right thing. And like, you're not even thinking like on that malicious or bad, you know, level, you know, or even like how it might look, you know, cause it's like, you're so caught up in wanting to help.
Right.
You know, and then you're like, wait, hold on, like, how could other people perceive this? You know, so it's like, it's those first 3 steps that it took for me to be like, wait a second, like, slow this down, you know? So I think that was one of the first biggest learning lessons is it's like, I not only have to, you know, yeah, while my motivations may have been good, it's like, how is it going to be perceived, you know, by 600 other people and parents, you know, and everyone else, you know, if I were to just rush in and save the day, you know, so it's like, I gotta think about those perceptions and also about how those perceptions, just like in high school, a lot of rumors, get blown way out of proportion, you know? So yeah, I think the first thing that I learned, probably, like I said, the first 3 days is just stepping back, slowing down, you know, and being like, think about those other perceptions. I think probably another time, let's see, that I feel like I messed up. I think I probably have messed up more with probably my administration than I had been in those relations, than probably students or parents. Now I remember, you know, I've just dropped the ball on like some organizational stuff, but it's like, I feel like I am at times probably too straightforward. Like I remember one time in a meeting, you know, I'd said, I'm going to edit this, you know, I'd said, hey, you know, if I'm out here effing up, you know, you guys just let me know. Like that's no issue with me. Just shoot me straight, you know? And it's like, they're all kind of a little bit shocked, you know, from my language. And you know, it's like, that's just a part of who I am, you know? And, you know, of course I can monitor that, but it's like, one of the things they always used to tell us is perception is reality, you know, in the Army. That's one of the things they always used to tell us. So it doesn't always matter. And they would specifically say that in the Army when they're talking about like sexual harassment. You know, they're very, very direct on that. Like they wouldn't tolerate sexual harassment in the Army at all. You know, so like in those conversations, you know, with, you know, a lot of the male dominated industry as the military is it's like, hey, it doesn't matter if you were joking about this or if you know, weren't taking it seriously. If another female or if another male, you know, perceives that as sexual harassment, like you're done, you know? So like, they're like, you have to be very cognizant and very aware of that. But swearing was not something in the military that was looked down upon. I mean, the F word was, you know, a noun, an adjective, you know, a pronoun. It was everything. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just like, so that's one of the things that I feel like coming into that it was just a different culture. And I think maybe when it comes to working and talking with adults and coworkers, I'm not as aware that I should be at times, you know, of how I might come off. Now, you know, Students, parents, that's a different relationship. But coworkers, I feel like, hey, I'm just going to be me, and take it or leave it type of thing. And I could definitely be better at that. Yeah.
Well, and I think it speaks to the differences in like the different positions, right? Because I think, in my situation, I probably get away with a lot more of that, which I think is good in the ultimate grand scheme of things, that I can be more real. But when you're working with a system like that, or an organization like that, you have to be cognizant of certain things because of the way the system is, unfortunately. So, and I think sometimes it can be a really good thing, because we all need to be called on our stuff from time to time. But yeah, I think to have to be so cautious about language.
Yeah.
And, I think that's definitely, there's differences in what you're doing in our field, whether or not that's true or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you make a tremendous point, and one that I haven't considered is, it's like, obviously in your building, in your facility, in your line of work, it's like the whole, and correct me if I'm wrong here at any point, but it's like my perspective is, it's like the foundation is based off truth, and sometimes it's the brutal truth.
Yes.
And so it's like that brutal truth, and that truth is respected, and it is wanted, and it's desired, it's like, hey, I want to know what's going on, right? And so even if that means like using some language that may like be considered foul to others, it's like, that's truthful, and it's like, that's what we want. And if that's how you have to feel like you have to express yourself, then that's fine. Right. So yeah, it's like, I feel like that was one of the big things. I feel like one of the biggest things in my role is it's like what they tell us, in school all the time. It's like, we're not there as a school counselor. It's like, we're not there to be on the teacher's side. We're not there to be on the administration side. We are not there to be on the parent side. We are there to be an advocate, for the students, and so, but it's like, I feel like the biggest problem with that is, truth is ultimately at the top of my pyramid. It's like, yeah, I'm going to hear the student side, and I'm going to go and talk to a teacher or an admin, about a conflict that they may have had. And it's like, let's have a conversation about that. Let's have a conversation about what happened. Just because you're an adult, that doesn't mean to me that you're telling the truth. And it's like, I've seen enough different people in my life, and I've worked for enough people in my life to know that adults are not truthful. We can watch TV, and see it in our politics. We can see it everywhere. Right. And so it's like, let's quit kidding ourselves. Let's quit thinking of these students as, as quote unquote kids, and it's like, let's have them be heard, because ultimately it's like, that's what they want, And so it's like, I'm going to hear their side of the story, and I'm going to confront that, be it with my administration or be it with a teacher. And that doesn't mean that it has to be anything that's negative or anything that's a difficult thing to do. It's like, this is just a conversation.
Well, and I wonder, too, if it wouldn't be important for those teachers or adults to understand, even if the kiddo is lying, to understand the motivation for that, or why they might have perceived that, right? To really understand that more so than just to flat out say, okay, you lied, and then, again, not use that opportunity for relationship building or just understanding their context, right? Because if they're lying, that's acting out too, but it usually has a reason. Yeah. So,
and I think you bring up a good point about that. Is as it's like, what do they say, that like 80% of communication is nonverbal?
Oh yeah.
So it's like, even if then it's an opportunity to talk about, an administrators, a teacher's, tone, nonverbals, that we're all sending, and not only sending, but presenting as a way to tell our students that this is a way that is acceptable to communicate. And it's just because these people are younger. No, it's not. Right. No, it is not. Right. And it's like, we have to be modeling that in the right way.
Yeah. And anecdotally, I've had a lot of clients share their experiences with teachers, and they don't say this about every teacher.
Sure.
So I don't, for the most part,
there's good and bad people everywhere.
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
Well, yes, in every profession, in every field. And it's interesting because, especially certain clients, they tend to be more truth tellers and they tend to be more objective than maybe some others. And, they've built that reputation over time. But even they will tell me these stories of, asking a question in class and having a teacher say, that's a dumb question.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Or just like mocking them for different things or literally, bullying the students themselves.
Yep.
These particular clients, they're not saying that about every teacher. They just say it about one or maybe even two. I haven't even heard about two, but usually they have one that they're like, it's just so hard to be in their class, and they may already struggle with social anxiety or anxiety, and then just to be mocked and to be almost kind of reinforced not to ask questions.
Yes.
It blows my mind. And I mean, obviously, like we said, in every field there's going to be people who unfortunately are just not probably there for the right reasons and may just not be the right fit for them.
Waiting for retirement. Let's be honest. Yeah. Getting a paycheck, knowing that, I can't pay off my student loans, and I got into this for virtuous reasons, and now I'm so far in debt, and I'm just going to ride this out till retirement, and I'm going to let my attitude reflect those same thoughts.
Right.
Which is completely sucks.
Oh, yeah. All around. I mean, because I feel for those people, too. I mean, I think they have their own context, like hurt people.
True. Oh, yeah.
But it's still sad that, we could probably go on and on about the educational system and the fact that teachers aren't more incentivized in different ways.
Absolutely. That's another part of it.
Yeah. Even the good ones, it's like they're amazing human beings that are working their butts off.
Yes.
And we are not incentivizing them to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of things there. That's a
whole can of worms.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I I think unless we're open to criticism, and I think that's the first part is, if people are not open to criticism and not and constructive criticism, and it goes back to, it's like, this doesn't have to be a threat. This doesn't have to be an attack on you. It's like this can be a conversation, about how we can be better, and be better in the business that we're in, and that is teaching students. That's helping people, within the education system. And so I think, that can be a difficult thing to approach, because I think sometimes it aligns with, me being a younger person and having that idea of like, well, who are you to tell me, what's happening in my classroom, and you were never a teacher, and I never was a teacher, so I think there's some merit to that, is it's like, well, you don't know our job. But again, it's like, this isn't about an attack. This isn't about a threat. This is about, me being above you. It's like, this is just about having a conversation about maybe how we can all be better, and maybe, part of that solution is me just sending an email, out to teachers, or like maybe even during a conference, and saying, I am more than happy to privately talk about, one-on-one with you as a teacher about what I'm hearing from students, the criticisms of you, and letting them come to me to see. That would be a good way, I think, and for me to see who wants to grow in their profession, who wants to see how they might get better. That would be an interesting practice.
One that's not currently employed.
No,
but it would be interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there's conflicts, with teachers, it's like typically, students will come to me or come to someone else and they'll talk, and then I pass it up to my principal, and the principal goes and has a conversation with those teachers. But maybe what I do is, maybe I go that route. Maybe I go that route. So that'd be an interesting bit.
As you're thinking.
Definitely, I love that. I love it.
And I have another question that I want to follow up on, but before I want to finish the final four, because I think we kind of answered the second and third one there.
Okay.
There's both good and bad moments in your profession, but the fourth one is kind of a fun one, and it's, what's your spirit animal?
My spirit animal. Oh gosh. Man, I've heard you ask other people I've heard you ask other people that on your podcast too, and like, I don't know, I really didn't think about it.
There's no scoring of this.
Yeah.
You don't get a C, D, or F.
Yeah. I don't know.
There's that.
Yeah. One of one of the first things, and I've actually been thinking about getting this tattoo for a while, and I don't know if it's indicative of like my spirit animal or things like that, but I've actually thought about like getting a snake.
A snake?
Yeah, like wrapped around my forearm, and I had originally planned like to have it go up my back, but I thought about it maybe just ending at like my elbow or just above my elbow, and having it come down and like on my hand. And then like doing it in two different ways, like doing like a black like with its mouth closed, and then doing like another one branching off from the same neck, but just with like a red outline of it opening its mouth like around like my index finger and my thumb. And one of the reasons, number one, I just think it'd be cool.
Number one, very
yeah,
important.
yeah. Well,
That'd be cool.
Yeah, well, and I have other tattoos, that are meaningful, and then, and I always thought, well, if you get a tattoo, like it has to be meaningful. It's like, no, not necessarily. It's like it can just be something you like, just artwork.
Yeah.
But then I got to thinking about it's like why a snake? Because it's like, especially like in like Western culture, I think that the snake is typically viewed, in coherence, I guess, if coherence is the right word, with Christianity, as something as like being bad and evil, the snake of Adam and Eve,
yeah.
So like that may be looked as like negative. It's like, but the same type. In culture, in military culture, it's that, don't tread on me type of thing, and so I think the reason, for the snake with its mouth closed is like one of calm, patience, taking its time, and then with the mouth open is that aggressiveness, and the perfect time to strike. In one sense, and taking advantage of opportunity. And that's kind of like the symbolism behind that, and I also think about Carl Jung, and he talked about the shadow, part of ourselves, and like understanding that shadow part of ourselves, that dark part of ourselves, with the same understanding of like that light, and being aware of both of those sides, and I think with knowing both of those sides, we're better able to manage. And so I think that's kind of that representation is and it's also like a snake is also a symbol of wisdom in some cultures, and so I think about like that wise, that calm, that patience, but then also acknowledging that shadow side of myself, that aggressiveness, and understanding not only aggressiveness, but then that opportunity to take advantage of certain options when they arise, be it, who knows, employability, in a different place, advantages like if I wanted to, play for a particular paintball team, as I mentioned earlier, being able to strike when the iron is hot, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of so I guess maybe spirit animal, might snake, but I really love dogs. I got 3 dogs at home,
mm-hmm.
And they're just affectionate and loving and kind, and they can have that aggressive nature, protecting. I think about virtue.
Loyalty.
Yeah, loyalty. Yeah, a lot of those things. Yeah. What's your spirit animal? Have you answered? Have you?
It's funny because I asked this question, but I don't like necessarily.
I just turned the tables on you.
Yeah, no, I don't have like a great answer. One of Dr. Scott Stegman, who I interviewed on the first podcast.
Yeah, that was a cool one.
Yeah, he related it back to his Myers-Briggs personality, so I kind of looked that up the other day because I was curious for myself. And I'm an ENFJ, and it's actually a dog.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Which I think is, it's kind of funny because I also love dogs, but I also just kind of, and seeing my dog and her breed specifically, she's just such a dork, just like I am. But she's intelligent, but she's uncoordinated, and she'll run into things.
Yeah.
And I, even though she's athletic too, so, it reminds me of me because I am very athletic, but I'm also a dork. I can't catch things very well. I don't have good hand-eye coordination. And I think that also applies to, my personality, too. I have a lot of intelligences, but I have ways in which I'm a dork that way, too, where I struggle. And but I'm a person who likes to be kind of happy-go-lucky, optimistic usually, and just kind of, loyal to friends, loyal to people in my life, and kind of upbeat. I'm kind of the person that I'm I could be mad at you, but then, And I mean, even my significant others, I mean, obviously there are times where this is not always the case, but usually I can be upset with you, but then, 5 minutes later, like, we're friends again, kind of like dogs. Like, they can get kind of argue with you or get upset, but, 5 minutes later, they're ready to go again. And they're just usually very positive and forgiving. And, there's pros and cons to that. But,
sure.
It's very much.
Yeah. That surprises me. I laugh because it surprises me about when you said about, like, coordination and things like that. It's like, man, I've seen you do, like, handstand push-ups and, like, muscle-ups and stuff. It's like, so it's like, to call yourself a dork and to call yourself, like, unbalanced, uncoordinated, I'm like, no.
You just haven't seen, like, the full spectrum, right? Because I think body coordination, I'm good at.
Yeah.
But... use objects outside of my body, and then you'll see me, like...
That makes sense.
Yeah. They called me T-Rex the other day because we were playing spike ball, and I just was like... like, using, like, my arms almost like a T-Rex to get the ball, like, thrown back or whatever. So,
that's funny.
I'm not always graceful and coordinated and stuff like that. So... But I think that's good. I mean, I think it's fun to make fun of yourself at times and to just embrace your... idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it keeps us humble, keeps us human. Yes. Recognizing our humanity. That's has to be one of the number ones, and the ability to laugh at ourselves. Yes. That's what I tell my students all the time. It's like, it's like in those mistakes. We talked a little bit about the education system. And like just kind of shunning that idea of being wrong, and I've been thinking about this for a while. It's like our culture is founded on winning. It's founded on winning, and I'm sure I'm probably missing some things there too. But it's like think about the Revolutionary War. It's like we were the underdogs, when Britain came over here, and it's like when we won, we won our independence, and all of our sports and our politics and our military and all these things, it's all based around winning. So it's like if you're not winning, you're wrong, And I think it's kind of reflected the same way in our schools sometimes, and not all the time. I think a lot of our, probably by and large, probably 99.99% of our teachers, they want people to answer questions, they want people to ask questions, but and if I had to take more of a guess, it's probably more of our student culture. That's probably makes fun of individuals, when they're wrong, and like I said, maybe that 0.01, percent of hopefully not teachers and not adults, that puts people down or mock them or whatever for being wrong. But it's like, if we can't afford to laugh at ourselves, if we can't afford to be wrong and understand that it is okay to be wrong so that we can be right in the future, if we don't have that idea first fixed in the front of our minds, then how do we expect to grow? How do we expect to be better? If we can't understand that mistakes are, probably much more of a natural course of life than being right is.
Oh yeah.
So it's an interesting idea, that idea of being right and winning, and how that might translate, culturally to not raising our hands, being afraid to be wrong, versus learning, and asking questions. So it's, I don't know, maybe that's a very broad connection, but I could see it as some possibilities.
Right.
So. Right.
And I think you're right in saying that. I don't think that we learn the skill of learning to fail well.
Yeah. That's a great way to put that.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think you're 100% right. I think you're 100% right on that.
At least I didn't.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about a client I saw this past week, and she has some major performance anxiety, where she will stay up until about 3 a.m. just trying to make sure she gets it right.
Yeah.
And how much of her life, like in the bigger picture of her life, so many other things are compromised. Her well-being, her sleep, her ability to, at times she's actually been graded off because she'll overdo work.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's surprising. Well, not surprising at the same time.
No, it's not. And I'm like, that's going to exhaust you and tear you apart
For
mentally
sure.
as a human being. If
sure.
We can't learn how to let things go, how to let things, and I guess that ties into perfectionism as
Absolutely.
well. It's like, learning how to be okay with the messiness of life, the failure of life, and just doing what we can and being okay with the rest.
Yep.
not loving it. Like, I mean, I'm never going to be like, yay, I failed. But,
but saying that's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. I have grace with that. And that's honestly enabled me to succeed more than going into that shame cave of like, man, I just suck.
Right.
And I'm just bad at things.
Yeah. And I think, and this is a very simplistic way of breaking this down, but it's like, I think about like 3 different levels, right? It's like, okay, I was wrong. And like, man, that sucks. And that was totally bad. And that was wrong, you know, and like really getting down on yourself. And then like kind of that middle level is like, that's okay. Mm-hmm. You know, that's okay to be wrong. And then like the next level that I think is probably unattainable is be like, kind of going back to what you said, like, yeah, I was wrong and I was happy about that, you know?
High five, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's that middle level of learning to be okay with that, you know, and learning to be okay with being wrong and making mistakes. And I think that's probably the biggest illusion. And one of the illusions that we're trying to break through with our school is demystifying. We have this current program, it's called Zello. And not only does Zello help to identify through 140 questions what a person might want to do later in life, and I've taken it 6 or 7 times, and my top 10 results are all something to do with therapy, you know, or you know, school counselor or personal therapist, or you know, whatever it may be, and so it's definitely on point. But then also demystifying that idea, you know, amongst students. It's not only a program, you know, to help students find out what they want to do in life, but it's a whole kind of character development program. And understanding like, hey, adults don't have it together all the time, you know, and we are not the icons of perfection, you know, whether it be financially, in our relationships, our understandings about ourselves, relationships with others. And so that's one of the angles, you know, that we're working on too, is having that connection, you know. And I remember talking to prior students who graduated, and I remember asking them, you know, I see them at graduation parties or out in Wichita or whatever, and I say, what is something that you wish you would have had with your teachers, you know? And they say, I wish I would have had more of a personal connection, you know. And I think some of that personal connection comes with being honest. And you know, we talk about disclosing, you know, in therapy and or school counseling, or you know, psychology, or whatever, you know, your facet is. And I'm more than happy. I love to share my failures with the students. You know, I love to tell students how I was a CDF student. I love to tell students how, you know, how I got into a lot of trouble, you know, even with the law, you know, when I was younger, and the road that led me down, and how that took away a lot of my own opportunities, you know, and of course do it at appropriate times, you know, and, you know, it's not about my story, it's about theirs, but to help them understand and relate to that, and know that they can still, you know, turn around and come back from those bad decisions. But it takes a lot. Yeah. It takes time, it takes grit, it takes continuing to fail and doubt, a lot of doubt. And that's, I have a picture of this iceberg behind me that I have hanging on my wall, and I forget the company that I got it from. But at the tip of the iceberg, you know, it's floating above the water, it says success. And then the larger 90%, you know, the iceberg that's underneath the water that you don't see, is all those things, is self-doubt and, you know, time and failure and all those things. You know, it has probably 15 or 20 words leading up to that point of success that you see. And so, you know, I hope to try and, you know, have that as a talking point and have them understand, you know, that's a large part of what life is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, especially in this day and age where I think that's all the more enhanced by social media.
Yes.
The fact that we see people's successes and we don't see all the other stuff. We don't see their dark passenger. We don't see the struggle. We don't see the failure. We just see people on Instagram talking about how much money they're making, or like how successful they are.
Yeah, on boats with a bunch of money.
Yeah. So it's it's tough.
And also, you know, part of that, I think, you know, demystifying process is understanding that like money won't make you happy. It's like it can bring a level of security. It can
provide some freedom in certain areas, for sure.
Yeah, it can make you feel better at times, you know, just like you said, security, freedom, you know, some of those things, but, you know, it won't make you happy. So, you know, the focus is not, you know, let's not go out and make as much money as we possibly can, but what are you going to do? What are you going to do within your job that you're going to be able to enjoy for 8, 10, or 12 hours a day. Because then if you're sleeping the other 8 and you're eating, the other, 2, maybe, how much time do you really have for yourself? And how much time are you going to use then to plug into Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever, to show you the life that you don't have? Right. So what are you going to do with those 8 to 12 hours a day that you feel like you're doing something that you like, you enjoy, that you're good at, all of those things. So,
well, and I think the way that, I look at it is that you can do something that you don't love if there's an ends to a mean.
Absolutely.
Because I think there's a lot of people also, so I think, this generation, at least the research is showing, they are more and more geared towards doing things they love, but then they're kind of swinging to the other end of the pendulum and not being able to do some of the drudgery and being able to go through some of the hoops to do what they love eventually.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
And so, and that's where, I try to, I think it's so important that we do say, hey, don't just settle for a job that you really don't like, because you are going to be, I think the way that it was framed to me that I liked actually was, you're more married to your job than you are to another human.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you are spending more time with it
for
and
sure
with it
yep.
than you will with any other human being. And so it's the most important relationship in your life, and that has to be something you enjoy doing. However, a lot of jobs where people would really love to do, they do take some hoop jumping. They do take some grit. They do take some, hey, I'm going to do some of the drudgery of, the not fun work to get there. And I think that's the only thing I see kind of missing in this upcoming generation, is that idea that, you've got to weigh all that out. You could go into a job you love off the bat and just decide, hey, I'm going to do that for the rest of my life and make a certain amount and live off of that, and I'm okay with that. And I think that's great. But then also to realize there's other options as well, as far as maybe I'm going to do something I don't love, but then after 2 years that puts me in a position to do something I do love.
Yep.
And so just understanding that they have multiple options with that, and sometimes that means doing things you don't love, but you're still honoring yourself, right? 'Cause I think they think they're betraying themselves if they ever do stuff they don't love. If I didn't have to go through college, even though there's so many amazing things I got through college and grad school, but if I could have just gone straight to grad school, heck yeah, I would have done that.
Yeah, definitely.
But, I knew I'd have to go through those 4 years, and I tried to make the best of it, and I knew I'd have to take math classes, which I'd never use again. Yeah. But you just try to make the best of that, because in our society, that's part of the hoops that you have to go through. Yep. But it's worth it to get to the other side and to actually do something you're passionate about and that you love. But I don't see that mentality as much.
Yeah, and I think you segued into another great point is, and that's why I have to tell students all the time, and I think that comes back to another part of being honest, and hearing that from a person who is older than them, is saying, hey, I tell them straight up, I'm like, I don't use algebra. I don't use geometry, not in my daily life. I don't use a lot of the stuff that I learned in high school or college, but it's but you've got to do it to put yourself in a better position, later on down the road. Right. That's just a part of it. I tell them, I'm like, you see this paperwork all stacked up? I'm like, I don't want to do this. But I was like, I got to, because I say I love the other 90% of my job, right? And that's working with students, and that's doing these different educational things. I was like, that's just a part of it. I was like, and the indirect lesson is doing something you don't want to do to put yourself in a better place tomorrow. Yes. And having that grit, that tenacity, that time management skills, the perseverance, all those things to do it. And that lesson of doing and dealing with the stress of that, and still being able to deal with the weight of that stress while still going about your daily functions in your life, in your family, in your job, at school, socially, to still be successful, and learning how to deal with that weight as well. And so those are a lot of the conversations, that I do have, with my freshmen and sophomores, who they see how they're not going to use a lot of this stuff, from the start, because they know what maybe they want to do, or maybe they don't know what they want to do. But even when they don't know what they want to do, they know what they're not interested in. And so they can't see the value in it. And so, and to use a business term, that's where value has to be created. That value of understanding that, you probably won't, especially since you're not interested in this. You're not going to be an engineer because you're not interested in math. but part of the process is working your way through that to put yourself in a better place tomorrow. Right. And that's just like with me in the Army. Like I said, first hour in, out of my 3.5-year contract, I knew I didn't want to do it. But I also knew I didn't want to pay for any of my college.
Right.
And it's like I got my bachelor's and master's paid for entirely, straight out the gate. So it's like, and I learned a lot, and I had a lot of fun, and I met a lot of great people, and I had a solid job for 3.5 years when the economy was crap. So it's like, and I got to tour the world. It's like, so what? There's a lot of good things in that. A lot of good things in that. So.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think that leads into a really good question, because I've had a couple clients even recently where they're struggling with their grades or they're seniors. And so they're just at this point where they're like, why even try? I mean, how do you motivate kids, if you have any sort of suggestions on, from a psychological standpoint, to continue to work and make good grades, or to basically to not unintentionally shoot themselves in the foot because they see math as being, unnecessary, but then if they get, if that contributes to their overall GPA, then they won't get into the programs they want to in the other disciplines.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's like one of my co-counselors used to say all the time, like, if I had a pill, for motivation, I'd be a billionaire.
Right.
Right.
And especially for high school students.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's where part of that, one of the biggest pieces is creating that relationship. Because, there's a lot of people that can stand in front of a classroom and dispense the information. But if you can create a relationship, and it's just like, it's the same way in schools as it is in business, it's like, if you can create a relationship where a person wants to work for you, then they are going to be more willing to do so, even when they're doing things that they don't want to do. So it's like, that's where that relationship piece comes into, and that's where that relationship piece comes into, getting to know them, getting to know, I remember in one of my first psychology classes, in college, it talked about if you can share one thing with a person, then you stand a much higher probability of creating a relationship with them. So, I mean, the smallest things, if you chew the same type of gum, if I see a kid walking down the hallway chewing juicy fruit, then maybe I'll go buy a pack of juicy fruit, at the gas station, and pull it out when next time I see him walk by and ask him if they want a piece of gum, knowing that they chew that juicy fruit, so then we can create a connection, we can create, a talk, or if they're wearing a Remington, hunting T-shirt, like, oh, what kind of rifle or shotgun do you have? Or, do you hunt? What do you hunt? Because I have some experience and background in that. So I think for me, it's all about creating those relationships, especially in my job first and foremost. And I think it's also about, showing the mountain that they've already come so far in doing, and creating a plan for them. So a lot of times, to circle back to your question of, how do we kind of motivate them, is, first, create that relationship. Second, look at the things, listen to them, and hear them out, to show them how far they've come, and remind them of that and the struggles they've been to help them reach that point. And then I think lastly the third step is really, showing the mountain that they've climbed. So if they're seniors, and it's like, dude, it's like, you've put in 3.5 years of work. Or you've taken, 50 or 40 or let's say even say 20% of your classes, and showing them that plan of, so like my recommendation, like for the field that you're in is contacting the school counselor, to where they go to school at, and say, hey, can you show me a transcript of not only what classes they have, but then what classes they still need to take to develop that plan. And I think so often, our students who don't care, don't want to, or can't see the value in education, you need to create a plan for them. And you're like, hey, this is where you've been, this is where you're going, this is how many credits you do have, and this is, what you have to do to get out of here. And this is the time frame that you can do it in. Like, for instance, I have one student that's been through hell and back, and now they're at the, they can't see the value in that education. But then when I mapped out that plan of saying, hey, yeah, you're behind in your credits, but by this year, by 2020, in May of 2020, you can graduate, you can be out of here, you can be doing your own thing, and you're going to be ahead or in the same pack of the 30 million Americans that are going to be graduating with a high school diploma too. And if you're not, then you're going to be that much further behind 30 million Americans that are going to be graduating, this year or whatever it is. I think 30 million is the total American population, but however 17 million, seniors there are, I don't know what the exact number is on that. So I think it's, recognizing their struggles, creating that relationship, seeing how far they've come, and then develop a plan with a distinct timeline to say, if you continue to put in the work, then you can reach this milestone, and having them understand that that is a milestone, and also recognizing those past milestones. And so I think when you recognize those past milestones and give them and show them that this is a big milestone for them, then seeing that this is another giant milestone, that can be checked off and moved forward with. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I said a lot of the same things in a lot of the different ways. So
yeah, but I mean, I think what I took from it is really being able to visually kind of show them and give them credit for how far they have come, and making it accessible, because you're right, like high schoolers, at least as far as I understand in brain development, like they don't have as good of an ability to see the future and to like think about their future self. So if we can kind of connect those dots for them, that's a lot more helpful, because I think a lot of people look back. At least I'll speak for myself. Mm-hmm. There are times I look back and I see so much more value I could have gotten out of my education. But at the time, I didn't have the same foresight that I do now. Mm-hmm. And so, or even the foresight to be able to be like, look, I probably won't use math, but what can I do to make it better for myself right now? Mm-hmm. Because I do need to have at least this grade to reach my goals.
Yep.
The other thing I like to use with clients that I'm just thinking about in general when they're making decisions in their life, or, moving forward with their goals, I'm always thinking about what parts of yourself are really the parts that are motivating this. Like, are they from your healthy sense of self, which we kind of define in therapy as like that part of you that's not acting out of fear. It's not acting out of trying to impress other people. It's not acting out of doubts, self-doubts, or insecurities, or it's just acting from your true nature, your true values, your true...
The reasons for you.
Yeah, if you didn't have all that other muck or all that other trauma or all those other things kind of in the way, right? And then, but I'm like, or is this coming from like, these other parts of you that aren't really your best self, right? And I'm like, if you're making a decision to drop out of high school from your best self, you do that. Like, I support that. Yeah. But I really want to understand that, because I don't... for most people, that's not the case.
Yeah.
For most people, it's not coming from their best self. It's coming from those fears. It's coming from stuff going on at home. It's coming from self-doubt or the inability to have that foresight, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, I think, and I think you bring a great point to the table, is that idea of being like, hey, are you doing this for you, or are you doing this... And I can give, are you doing this for maybe the wrong reasons? I can give two examples to that. I knew one senior who actually literally dropped out of high school when he turned 18, when he was like one class away from graduating high school, to smite his parents because he hated them so much. He's like, I'm going to do this just to piss him off. But the kid, he was brilliant. Yeah. I mean, he was like in AP chemistry, and like, they didn't, it's like you have algebra 2 and geometry. They just labeled it advanced math. Is all the math class, that like no specific, just advanced math. Like he's at a very high level, and he knew he could do it, but he's like, I'm going to do this to smite them, and I don't care, because I can go back and get the piece of paper, even though it'll cost me another semester and $175 of my own money, while working to do it. But I'm going to do it to piss him off, right? And then I have another... And
maybe he needed to.
Yeah.
Right? Which I think is, our job as therapists to really understand that, and instead of just seeing it as like this kid being defiant and like a pain in the butt, like... I laughed because I was like, I would have loved to work with that client, because I would have been like, yeah, you probably need to do that. But then also trying to unpack that to where he's able to get his needs met from his best self.
Right.
Not those other parts. Because I see that as him, like, getting those needs met. Because I do think there's something strong about needing to send that message to your parent.
Yeah.
Right? And he needed that.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't want to take that message away.
Yeah.
But I want to take the part where it's, like, hurting him to have to get his needs met, or to have to outgrow that part of his life.
Yeah.
Right? And so...
Yeah.
And that's so interesting.
Yeah. And you make a great point about that. And I think, and that's what I love about talking to you is your perspective and, putting a different spin on that, because I was like, when he said that at first, I was kind of like, I was like, dude, that's ridiculous. Like, why would you do that?
First reaction is like,
yeah.
You're brilliant. Like,
right.
even me, my anxiety as a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
my first response, my natural one is like, oh my gosh, your life, like, kid,
yeah.
you're so smart.
Yeah.
What? That's my first gut reaction typically. But then, usually at this point, I've slowed down a bit, and I can have that second response now. But
I think when we're having that conversation, I don't know if I said like that's ridiculous, or I don't think I said anything, but I think the expression on my face said it. I was kind of like, why would you do that?
Right,
like that was like, yeah, definitely, like that was like the message I was sending them. And then I think I asked a question. I'm like, and I just, because we had a pretty open and honest relationship, when we were talking, and I'm like, why would you do that? And he's like, I just do it just to smite my parents. And I'm like, well, and it's like, you do realize it's like, that's just going to cost you more time and money in the future just to do what you could do in the first place, right?
He knows that.
Yeah.
He needs to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the powerful thing to recognize. And I only say that because, like, I have clients that sometimes part of their eating disorder, something that could kill them, is about sending a message or having a certain impact on their family system.
Yeah, because nothing else has gotten through up to this point.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons behind why they need to. But he knows. He knows.
Yeah. And I know him and his parents are at odds, big grind, all the time. And that's another thing about my job is it's like I see so many kids, and so it's like intelligent guy like that, who knows what he's doing. I was just like, well, okay. I'm like, do what you got to do. Do what you feel like you got to do. Because it's like he's going to be fine, and he
probably will be.
Yeah.
I mean, even regardless of that.
Yeah. And I heard, and he's fine. He's got his certificate and doing things, so it's like that doesn't surprise me in the least bit. And then and then there's another one of my students, who has trichomania, who great anxiety, great depression, a lot of things, and understands that they don't connect with a lot of the students in the high school for a lot of reasons. Very, very bright, and very hardworking, and so is actually going to graduate a year early and has already been accepted to an art college out of state. Instead of like letting those things cripple them and shut them down and kind of drown out their ability and their light to do so well in an academic perspective, they're like, no, I'm going to look in a different direction, and I'm going to raise myself up and go and talk to the Board of Education and get into college early and do all these things to push myself to a higher level. And it's just like, it's like,
that's so cool.
That, yeah, it is. It is. I have so much admiration for that individual, and just, for not only for what they've been through and overcame, but continue to overcome, and the progress that I've seen in them in 3 short years. So it's cool. It is cool.
That's so neat.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Are they seeing anybody? Do you know?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
I know of somebody who works specifically
with
trichotillomania.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I was like, I was just gonna put in a little shameless buzz for them.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean, and I think they're. Yeah, I think they're doing well with them.
Really well.
Yeah.
So like rock on with that.
And from freshman year, to junior, it's like, just they've dealt very well with a lot of things, and I've seen a lot of growth in them. So, but I'll probably still get the name from you, afterwards, just to pass it along, because you never know how relationships, might change with people, or, and then like I said, I see a lot of students, and sometimes it's, we don't always get too in depth because it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time. And that's one of the other things. I think one of the hardest parts about my job is recognizing that time. And, one of the things we talked about earlier is that idea of like, sometimes I want to get snippy, and that's like that part of me, wants to say, well, if you can form a genuine, understanding, caring relationship in 20 minutes, when sometimes I catch criticism with the amount of time I spend with students, it's like, you should be doing my job.
Right, or like administration,
right.
Being
that
frustrated that you can't cure somebody's mental health issues in 20 minutes.
No, no. Yeah. Or not even, and I think maybe it's just because, the roles have changed. It's like since 2001, it's like, there's been a lot of big initiatives, from colleges and, the federal government to recognize that like mental health needs to be a major focal point, for students. And so I think, and that's where I can't be, and that's where I have to give them space and understanding, is to say, hey, like, that's just probably not something that they know of or aware of, because they've been working in a different historical context for, 20 years, and especially if you've never been a counselor. It's like a lot of people have been a teacher, and a lot of people have been, and some people have been administration, but not a lot of people have been counselors. It's like there might be, 2 to a building of 600, or 4 to a building of, or 6 to a building of 3,000, so it's like, those are very few and far between, I think, compared to a lot of the other positions. So it's just it's a different dynamic. So
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So we're going to go ahead and head into our final 4.
Okay.
And so the first question of the final 4 is, what is the one thing you wish you knew when you first started?
I think I knew instinctively that I wasn't going to be able to help everyone. And I learned that in a big way when I was doing my practicum at a school in Wichita. And I had 2 females that were kind of going at each other verbally, and it's like no matter what I said or what I tried to do or implement, it just didn't seem like it was going anywhere. So I knew on a theoretical level, on a mental level, that I wasn't going to be able to help everyone or fix every situation. But I had one of the female students actually get up and being like, I'm going to go talk to, the vice principal, and just like got up and left. And I was like, okay, and it's like, I'm a practicum student. It's like, I don't know how any of this works, if this, what I did wrong.
Right.
And it's like, and then I went down to the vice principal's office, and those, 2 women are sitting there having a conversation and getting things worked out. But it's like, she had that connection with that person. So I think the biggest thing that hit me, then on an emotional level, of an emotional understanding of, it's like, you're not going to be able to connect to everyone, and you're not going to be able to be everyone's person. And so I think, again, it's like that part of like understanding it and then living it.
Yes.
So I think that was a big hitter for me, for sure. But it was a good one. It was a necessary one.
Yeah.
Because that also takes the weight off my shoulders. So it's like, I think naturally anyone in the helping professions wants to help everyone,
Yeah.
But even when I see like some of my other former students going in and talking to my co-counselor, it's like, dude, and like I feel like that pull and that want, to be seen and to be noticed, to say, hey, you can still come and talk to me. It's like, dude, it's like, check your ego. That's your ego talking right now. It's like, let them be them, and if they want to come and talk to you, they will.
Yes.
Because like maybe she's providing a different level or a different type of growth that I haven't been able to see or provide. So it's like, dude, check your ego. So that was a good one for me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's such a good lesson as a therapist, but also as a human, because I think that, in our lives, even personally, we can want to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Or in the helping profession
Sure.
especially. And to recognize that, that's usually coming from a not so great part of ourselves,
right?
Or an anxiety in ourselves.
Yes.
And so yeah, I mean, I think that it's so great to learn that through experience. But I was in that boat too, where, when I first was in my practicum, I remember having that pointed out to me, like,
yeah.
Jenny, you're not going to fix everybody, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's some relief to that too.
Yeah, definitely. Or else, man, to be able to, we talked about, relationships and taking that home and being married to your job. It's like, not only are you married to your job for that length of time, but then you come home to the person you are in a relationship with or you are married to. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and you're bringing work home with you too and talking about work. So it's like, yeah, it's like we're married to our jobs and our profession more than we are to anything else. I think that was a great point that you brought up earlier.
Yeah.
So.
For sure. So what's a good psychology-related book for people in the field or outside of the field?
Of school counseling?
Well, either one. I mean, whether it's just a general psychology,
sure,
but just something related to psychology.
Yeah. I feel like one of the biggest books that have impacted my life is the author is Eckhart Tolle. If you've ever heard of any of his work. Mm-hmm. It's not The Power of Now. It's an orange cover. I can't think of it. I'm gonna Google it. I'm gonna Google it in real time because
cool.
It's it's just all about the ego and understanding the ego, and that's just been like, that hit me on such a just helped me so much in my own life.
It,
It's a new earth.
Yeah.
A new earth. Oh my
Perfect.
gosh, when I read that, and it was talking about, you know, the ego and the reasons why we do things, and it's just like that blew me away. Yeah, that's one of my favorites for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What about a quote or any words that have just kind of been floating around in your brain, or something that you tell other people?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite one, or one that you use often?
Man, I have so many. but now that you ask, like, I probably can't think of a one, like, right off the top. Maybe we'll come back to that question.
Okay.
Or maybe I'll even, like, text it to you. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, sometimes it's hard. It doesn't have to be, like, a perfect one. But
Yeah.
I just, you know, there are little phrases or isms that I'll say that I usually have stolen from other people. But,
Yeah. What's one of yours?
You know, we'll never arrive, and that's okay, especially with my perfectionist. Or, usually the best way to do something is to do it slowly. Or, gosh, that's not even the correct way of saying that quote, but
And you saying that made me remember one of the ones that I say. But go ahead.
Yeah, and just eyes on your own plate, because I work with eating disorders.
Yeah.
I mean, these have come from several different sources, but there's just little isms and things that I remember, you know, just to be hopefully helpful for people, or the fact that, you know, we make 39 mistakes in a day. I know there's other ones that are more about honesty and being real, you know, because I think that authenticity is huge. And, the most compassionate people have the best boundaries. That's something from Brene Brown. I quote her a lot too. I think back in grad school, people kind of used to like endearingly tease me about that, because I'd always be like, well, Brene Brown said, you know, like I have so many different quotes from her about what trustworthiness is, and, you know, the purpose of anger, and actually that would be Harriet Lerner. But yeah, anyway, I could go all day into different little quotes and things that I reference in my work.
Yeah. I think, so like one of the things my stepmom always says is, it's like, we can only drive our own car, you know? So it's like, when we're out in traffic and we get pissed off at people, it's like at the end of the day, you know, it's like, and our own car is our own person. And she makes that reference, you know, as it's like, we can't control others, you know, it's like, we have to learn how to control ourselves. And kind of on a quote that you said earlier, there's a quote that says, and I'm not sure who it's from or where it's from, but it's better to travel well than to arrive.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, so it's like, if we have an idea or a goal in mind and we're trying to get somewhere, but we're leaving this wake of destruction, you know, in our path, it's like, how good was it? Even if we reached that goal, but if we stomped and crushed and manipulated people, you know, to get to where we want to be, you know, what have we really done? You know, and I think it's that first part, but I think it's also the part of like that self-peace, that self-care, you know, of wanting to do things well, to do things right. And I think even in our own profession, but it's like, if we're filled with a lot of, as you pointed out earlier, you know, those feelings and those different emotions, and that cycle of doing things the wrong way to satisfy maybe our ego, then, you know, and we've done things maybe wrong in the path of that, or we destroyed ourselves in the process, you know, how much maybe we've arrived for someone else, but have we destroyed ourselves in the process?
Right.
So to travel well rather than to arrive. Better to travel well than to arrive. You know, because it's like, and going back to what you, and that spark that, or that jog, that quote is, you know, we never really arrive, you know? So, yeah, I think that's probably one.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most frustrating and awesome, empowering thing at the same time.
Yeah, it's a release, you know. I feel like it's like floating on that river with only a paddle, but knowing that we're not always sure or aware of where that stream is going to take us or direct us. But we can make minor adjustments, but knowing that, man, we're just in that boat for the time being.
Yep.
We're just all floating on the same river.
Yes, we are. Absolutely. And how important, like, you know, the quote you were saying, just that process matters. How we do things matter. Wow. Yeah, that's so good. And then last, what is a question I didn't ask you that you feel would be important to ask?
A question. that I feel like that.
So, like, what did I miss, essentially? Because obviously, as you have somebody interview you, you know, we can have our great ideas about what's important to ask, but maybe you had an idea about something I missed.
I wouldn't say anything that you miss, but, you know, one of the kind of, and this might kind of further align with, like, what I talk about with the students is it's like, you know, continue to question, continue to be curious. You know, I think, you know, with the systems that we have in place, you know, and everything that we're doing, it doesn't have to be the way that it is simply because it hasn't been that way any other point in history or any other time. And so it's like we have to continue to question, we have to continue to ask, and I think curiosity is lost as we get older. Imagination is lost as we get older. But, you know, any CEO, any person who, you know, product manufacturer, anyone in any field regarding that or education or counseling, it's like we have to stay curious and we have to keep our imagination, you know, in order to, I think those help to solve processes, you know, and help to solve bigger problems and breaking down those barriers and those structures and saying, why can't it be like this? You know, why can't we have this? And having those bigger dreams. So, I mean, to keep the curiosity, to keep the imagination, and I think to continue to dream bigger and allow ourselves to do that and give permission to do that. Who knows where that might lead, you know, as long as it's, you know, for the betterment of everyone. So, ourselves included.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm with you. I mean, I forget that people aren't always as naturally curious as I kind of am.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was the kid that was I was the kid that bothered my mom with a million questions. Yeah. And I still am that kid. I mean, I'm just doing it with adults.
Sure.
Sure. But, like, you're so right. I mean, how much curiosity has opened doors, and I think when I'm acting from a not good place in myself, I do cut off that curiosity, right? And I come more into myself and become more self-absorbed and fearful in different ways. But how important that concept is for us to grow as humans and as a society.
And if I had to take a guess, I think curiosity is one of the things that brings people into the helping profession. You know, not only to learn about ourselves, but it's like we have an opportunity to see hundreds, you know, if not thousands over our lifetime, different worlds. You know, it's like when we take the time to sit with someone, we're viewing into a different world. Yes. And that curiosity and wanting to understand, I think, is it's paramount, you know, to have if you really want to. Because I think curiosity is wanting to lead to understanding. And if we are truly curious and we truly want to understand, and if we truly want to understand, then we're truly going to form that relationship with a person, you know, and you know, and dig deep into that and work on that type of stuff. So I think if we hold on to that curiosity, you know, and that imagination, those two combined, I think, are very powerful forces.
They are.
So.
Absolutely, and I would say that's true too because. This is completely anecdotal, but, like, for me, I'm very fascinated by serial killers, and so is one of my colleagues, and I've just seen in our profession, like, we could have this, like, big heart for helping people, but we're also just weirdly curious about what makes people tick, and, like, I also had a weird... I didn't even like therapy when I was a kid. I thought it was a joke. Yeah. But I was fascinated by the Holocaust. And I wanted to learn everything I could about it and asked all these questions about, you know, and I think I was fascinated because I couldn't understand how it happened. And I wanted to. Yeah. And Me too.
It's funny you mentioned that because I remember that too. It's like how could a whole nation of people allow this to transpire? Right. You know.
And just trying to wrap my little kid brain around that. Yeah. But I've seen that a lot with therapists and other people in this field, and probably scientists and other people in that regard. I just see that natural curiosity. So. Yeah.
You know, we were talking about quotes, and now, you know, in conversation, you got my mind jogging. So, you know how, you know, I think the common, you know, therapist saying is it's like, you know, there's when it comes to people, if people were a washing machine, you know, there's no such thing as a setting on normal. You know, or something. I'm probably screwing that up. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, you know, like people aren't a washing machine. There's no setting on normal. You know, since there's no real definition of normal. And so it's like if I had to imagine a washing machine and, you know, the culture of humanity, I guess if we're going to say, you know, well-adjusted, healthy, you know, all of those things, I would set it on a little funny.
A little funny.
A little funny. And if I had to, say maybe, for people who are struggling with different, mental illnesses, I would set it on just a little more funny, and I think I say that or think that, to destigmatize mental health, and I also I don't mean to say that to lessen or to take away those real things that people are struggling with, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, the list goes on, throughout the DSM, but to bring us closer to that idea, it's like we're really not, so many people think that normal people, quote unquote, really have it together, on the outside, but it's like we're all just a little funny, and people who are struggling with stuff just a little more, is to bring us closer in relation to those ideas. Is it's like let's not put ourselves up on a pedestal,
Right.
just because we may not be struggling or able to see other people's struggles,
Right.
Well,
and one of those little quotes, everything makes sense in context.
Oh yeah.
And so it's the people that might be a little more funny than us in certain ways, we never understand fully what their context is.
Absolutely.
And so there's so many times that, when I'm able to put myself in my client's shoes, I can see that, wow, context matters.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
I have no doubts that, any other intelligent, capable, wonderful human being would be in a similar situation.
Yeah.
They might use a different strategy.
Sure.
But there'd still be that energy to work through.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't think they realize that if it's not a mental health thing, sometimes it can come out as a physical health thing, or it could come out in other ways that we glorify in our society, where people struggle with workaholism, but they never connect or have intimacy with humans.
Right.
Right? And, people wouldn't say, oh, that's a mental health condition. But, yeah, I don't know that I've met such a fearsome creature as the normal person.
Right.
We all have our things.
Sure.
And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you make a great point about that. And again, kind of going back to that idea of seeing it and living it and theoretical things. It's like the longer I'm in this, and I think about a student, who has a lot of social anxiety. Just almost can't get up and give a speech, without crying or shutting down, and then running to their desk or running outside of the classroom. And I'm back in school right now too, and the more I read about the different things and see them and understand them, and hearing about this person's past and hearing about how, mom and dad and friends, always be putting this individual down. It's like, no wonder why they don't have any confidence. And it seems like the longer I'm in, this business, and understanding the concepts and the ideas and how, they're reacting to certain stimulus every day, and comparing that to their past interactions, it's almost to me, it's as clear as having a cut on your leg, or a cut on your arm, and bandaging that and being okay with that and moving on in life, compared to, working through that past and seeing how it's affecting their future. You get a cut in your leg on the past, and it gets infected and there's bacteria there and it's going to affect your future. You have an issue that happened before in the past repeatedly, that's affected you in a big way, and you're seeing the symptom of that in the future. Seeing how those are just so clearly connected is becoming more and more crystal clear as time goes on. It's just like, pow, and you're talking about, when you're younger and a kid, and thinking, mental health is just kind of, frou-frou, whatever, and that, I know that wasn't your words, I know it wasn't a direct quote, but it's kind of like, it's kind of, maybe that's not real science there.
Right.
But it's like, as time goes on and me educating myself more and seeing those instances, it's like, it's as clear as night and day.
It is so
Yeah,
once you have the lens to see it.
Yeah, and I really, 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 really wish, and it's thinking about big ideas, it's like, I really wish more of our entire culture would be able to see that, and having that idea, having that dream, and then being like, how can we enact that in schools?
Yeah, how can we help the little people? Because we know actually we can make such a bigger change when they're really little.
Yep.
And then throughout their development, throughout high school. But the research shows, especially when they're really little, and the fact that a lot of people don't understand that is horrible because we're not seeing the right programs being, funded. We're not seeing the money being put towards that to actually create better economic growth for our country on the other side. Like, we know that, every dollar we put towards helping with childhood trauma is going to give us $7 more in the future. And if you looked at an economist or any other person, they'd be like, of course we
this is a
no
no-brainer,
right? But when you look at your politicians, they don't get that.
Yeah.
And so they just see it as a waste of resources.
Right.
And they don't understand it. And obviously, there's a lot of problems with that. But, my point being, early childhood trauma matters.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
We're seeing that more and more.
Yeah.
And although kids can't verbalize it at that age, the body keeps a score, kind of like I was telling you. That's his expression, the body keeps a score.
Yeah, that's a fantastic expression.
And it impacts school, performance and work and everything else. And yeah.
And
I don't know, we could talk about this for a million hours.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our school nurse used to have a quote that relates to that, and I'm probably going to mess this up, but it's something to the effect, it's like it's easier to help kids or fix kids than it is to fix broken men. And I'm going to have to look that up, but it's something along those lines of, the point is, it's like, hey, it's easier to help kids right now than it is to fix broken adults later on when they have all that baggage and all of those walls up and all those other things. So
100%.
Yep.
Yeah, I work with a lot of adults too, where I know that if I would have gotten them as teenagers, they would have had a completely different life trajectory, probably. But I still love working with them as adults, but it's just interesting to be like, oh, they come to me when they're in that worst case scenario as an adult versus getting the help they need earlier.
Yep, and you hear that, professional sports athletes, actors, anyone who has any sort of spotlight on them, they said, I had that one person in my life. I had that counselor, I had that teacher, I had that parent, I had that, friend, whatever, that altered that trajectory.
For sure.
Yeah. So.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Yeah.
Having a conversation with me. It wasn't as much of an interview as a conversation, but I kind of appreciate that.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk, and that means a lot to me, because as I've said to you before, I greatly admire you, and I greatly admire your work that you do, not only from an academic perspective, but being in CrossFit together and seeing your level of athleticism and competitiveness, you blow me away in a lot of aspects, and so to have you say, hey, I want to take time with you. I just felt like that was really exciting and really cool for me. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.